Hi, this is Erica with Launching Legacies. Welcome to our daily devotional. So I'm really excited because if you watched the last devotional, you were with me through the process of seeking God's face instead of his hand and really challenging ourselves. Remember, it was a his face challenge, challenging ourselves to get into a place in which we understood God outside of the roles that he plays and outside of the things that he does. And so we talked there in that series about Abraham being called the friend of God. And it's interesting. I went back and did deeper work, and found that God himself, God the Father, and Abraham are the only two that are really called friends, right? Jesus has some implications, which is there's a friend that sticks closer than the brother, and then there was a disciple who Jesus beloved the most. But when we're talking about God the Father and his relationship with man, we see that really there was one person who was called the friend of God, and that was Abraham. And so I want to go through some scriptures, but then I want to kind of go through this process of unpacking what it was like for Abraham to be a friend of God and how the development of that relationship went along, because I'm at this point trying to parallel that relationship. So what I learned is through both the challenge of last week, which I have been on for 2 weeks, right? And so then last week I was doing some of this work with the friendship with God. And so I'm always a little bit ahead. Otherwise I wouldn't really be able to work on it as the devotional. So I'm a little bit ahead, but sometimes I'm really slow. So I feel like I'm progressing at the same time that I'm talking. So big picture though, what we want to talk about is how did this friendship with God and Abraham develop? And like I said, I'm trying to parallel that friendship with God. Why? Because there's value in it. I mean, if God calls you his friend, and the passage that we can reference most is in James, but honestly, in Isaiah, there's a passage about that reference of God and Abraham being friends. And in Second Chronicles, there's a passage that says that God and Abraham were friends. And so what's happened here is this friendship is known. It's like established in the scriptures. And I wanted to go back to that friendship and kind of work through the nuances or the details that we have access to through the scriptures to really get the heart of what is it like to have a real friendship with God, and how did Abraham develop it and nobody else is patterned after that same friendship, right? It's a unique dynamic friendship that God and Abraham have that I want to have with God. I can't have what Abraham had. I know that because there's some details that I've learned through my studies and previous studies and studying again. Like I just keep going back over it. I'm like, oh, okay. I see how this is a unique friendship that really nobody can duplicate the friendship that God and Abraham have. They can't make it exactly the same, right? Not a cookie cutter, but I want to get close. And so I want to bring you into the process of which I am understanding Abraham and God's friendship. And I hope that you'll enjoy the process because it's kind of cool and it's very interesting. And I never thought really about Abraham in the way that I'm going to be thinking about him or have been thinking about him as I'm doing this study. So I know I did a lot of talking, so let's get to it. Throughout this study, at least for today and tomorrow, you're going to have the same slide, and it's just kind of a timeline of what's happening with God and Abraham. There's not all the details are not there, but definitely some of them. So I want to encourage you, because part of this is you need to be reading through the life of Abraham as he's walking with the Lord. And so I want to encourage you to look at that while we're looking at it, but it's going to start in the beginning of all of our devotionals at least today and tomorrow. I don't know as we progress, but it'll start that way so that we can kind of have this understanding of how this friendship developed. So before we get too deep into it, so that slide's gone. So now let's just focus here. Let's focus on what's actually happening. So after Adam and Eve, and God's walking in the garden with Adam and Eve, that's in the 2nd chapter of Genesis. After that, God walks with Enoch, and then Enoch is taken up. Okay. And so we don't see him anymore. Okay. So there is no they clearly had a relationship. And I don't know, Enoch is not called the friend of God, but clearly he enjoyed God and God enjoyed him, because he just walked right on into glory. But other than that, we really see only, again, God is walking in the garden with Adam and Eve, in the cool of the evening. We see that in Genesis 2. We see the reference to Enoch. We see Noah, okay? And so Noah is given a word from God and told about this flood that's coming, okay? But other than Noah, Enoch, Adam, and Eve, other than those three, which again are very brief instances of interaction, no one before Abraham had an extensive relationship with God. At least if they did, it wasn't documented, right? And so Abraham steps on the scene as, for one, a part of another nation that he's got to be called away from. That happens in Genesis chapter 12. But he steps on the scene, and really God is not concretely known. We know now God, we can access God. We can have an understanding of God. Even people who are atheists or who haven't even heard of it, the word says that God is revealing himself through creation. Yes, but we can also get access to a lot of materials on who God is and how God is, especially in the Western world. You can Google, you can go to a library, you can go to a motel room and open the drawer and get a Bible, the Gideon Bible, right out of the top drawer there. You can go a lot of places and get access to a knowledge and an understanding of God. Some of it won't be correct, but you'll have a concept of who God is, right? Depending on what sources you use. But now imagine Abraham doesn't have all that, right? He doesn't have all that. Whatever knowledge of the Almighty God that Abraham has, it is extremely limited. We know that, for one, because the world is not very large, because it was just destroyed in the flood. And two, because he's called away from his people. So they've kind of gone into some other things, right? They've gone into some other things. And that's why Abraham needed to call him away, to give him a promise to do these amazing things in his life. And so here we have this the beauty of novelty, right? The beauty of like a fresh relationship developing. And so you have God calling Abraham, and Abraham literally establishes trust with God by just saying yes. Like he's like, okay, fine, I'm going to walk away from my people and go with you, right? I said that was Genesis 12, but he literally just goes. He goes and walks with the Lord, and he starts this journey, and there are definitely ups and downs in the journey, and things that Abraham doesn't fully understand, and Abraham definitely makes a lot of mistakes. But through it all, he is walking with the Lord. And so through the landscape of his life, right, through all of those ups and downs, he's getting to know God intimately, and not through a church, a pew, a Bible. He's not getting to know him through a sermon or a devotional. He's not getting to know him from his mother or his grandmother. He's not getting to know him from any other people who are accessible. He has a brief interaction with Melchizedek, and we'll talk about that probably as we get going on a little bit further into his story. But I just want to kind of stop here for day one. And I want us to stop and think about what it meant for Abraham to be called away with no knowledge of God, and not even a way to get really knowledge other than through relationship. And I think how beautiful that is, right? Adam and Eve had that opportunity. Noah had that opportunity. Enoch walked with God and clearly had and took advantage of that opportunity. But Abraham, we get to see him living in that opportunity, and we get to see this friendship building with God. And although we don't know fully all of his emotions and understandings, because this text, we're reading text and going deep into the text even, doesn't give us the fullness of his heart and his experience. Can you imagine everything else, every other source of information being gone, and just your information from God to you directly in conversation, in relationship, being the way that you know God? Could you imagine that? Could you imagine if anything else that was impure was taken away, and you just had the purity of that walk with the Lord? Not a knowledge, not a name of him, not a anything else. You're just walking with him, and he's telling you who he is, and he's directing you with who he is, and you're saying yes to him for who he is, not even knowing if he can do what he said he'll do, right? He's made some promises to you, but you don't know him as a fulfiller of promises. Why not? Because you don't know him. All right. You're developing relationship and you're knowing him even as you are being known by him. And it's a journey and it's a walk and it's amazing. And this is Abraham's journey in friendship with God. Amazing. And like I said, he's going to interact with at least one more person who does know of God Almighty, right? But before that, he starts to walk with them on this journey. So I just wanted us to meditate there. So maybe you could get to Genesis chapter 12 and spend some time in the understanding of it. And then just imagine yourself knowing God from just him revealing himself to you. Just saying, here I am. I called you out. Here I am. This is who you know. This is who you are. This is how we're going to walk together. You're going to leave everything else behind. It's something in the concept of this abandoning his family and abandoning everything that is very uplifting and enlightening for me in the process of saying I want to become God's friend. I really want you to be my friend. And so I want to let you be the friend that you want to be to me, God. Like something in that part and the abandoning of everything that he knew. There's something in the coupling of those two things together that is extremely powerful. And I don't know if it speaks to you, but it speaks to me. And that's all I can speak about is that this is cool. He doesn't have anything. He doesn't have anyone. He just has God. And he's just going to get the best friendship in the whole Bible with just having God. Not having a whole nation of people yet, because he's going to be the father of them. Not having a whole anything, just him. And that's amazing to me. And so I just want you to spend some time meditating on it. I know I'm kind of repeating myself. I'm super excited. So stoked about this. You just don't even know. But I'm going to tone it down. And I'm in this devotional by saying we're praying for you. We are praying that like Abraham, you will call yourself God's friend. And that like Abraham, God will call you his friend, and that development of true and sincere friendship with a clean heart, clean hands and a pure heart, right? Clean hands and a pure heart would be the sincerity of your walk with the Lord. I don't know about you. I'm just trying to be the better friend than anybody else. I'm kind of a competitor. I was trying to be that person. We're praying that you would be even the better, that you would top me. That's my prayer. It's like, Lord, let them beat me to friendship with you. Then I'll know I've done a good work in this devotional series. Let them beat you beat me at friendship with you. Let that be what this is a testimony of. All of us being the best of friends with God. I'm praying for you, like I said. We'll see you again tomorrow with another devotional. Until then, be blessed.